Welcome to Unleashed, the podcast where we redefine leadership by focusing on what truly matters, the people driving change. Change leadership is about guiding people through transformation in a way that inspires them to embrace change because they believe in it. Whether you're a leader looking to foster a culture of growth or someone eager to break through barriers in life and business, this podcast is for you. Now our host, Wendy.
Welcome back to the Unleashed podcast. My name is Wendy Swanson, and I'll be your host today. I'm really excited to introduce our guest today. We've been trying to make this happen for a while. He's been flying all over the world. So the fact that you're actually home in Windsor, Ontario, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So Daniel is coming to us from Windsor, Ontario, and really excited to welcome Daniel Mendonca. Did I say that correctly?
It's Mendonca, but it's not the worst. That's not the worst pronunciation I've ever heard of it. So I don't write it with the fancy accent under the C like I should, being a good Portuguese Canadian. So I get Mendonca quite a bit.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you for your grace. Probably should have asked you that before we got started. Here we go. So Daniel is a results-driven leader focused on enhancing the customer experience journey as the head of growth at Halight. He specializes in customer education, helping businesses achieve measurable success through retail training programs that improve sell-in, sell-through, and peer-to-peer sales, which is something we're really going to focus on today because I think that's an interesting part of, it's all interesting. I think that's one of the most interesting things that you do at Halight. Daniel's work strengthens the connection between consumers and brands, driving growth and long-term relationships. Guided by core values like collaboration, empowerment, and authenticity, Daniel leads with a practical, people-first mindset. He emphasizes clear communication, teamwork, and sustainable success in all efforts. In his busy schedule, alongside his corporate role, Daniel also coaches university soccer, where he applies his leadership principles to help student athletes grow. His diverse experience drives his approach to leadership, blending practical outcomes with personal development. So again, Daniel, just really excited to have you and just dig into your giftings and passions and all the things that you do in work and also in life. So I personally just want to say I've appreciated your authentic and transparent leadership styles, and our listeners have a lot to gain from your expertise and your passion and your leadership. So welcome.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. It's one of those moments where you hear somebody read your bio and you're like, oh boy, that's someone's talking about me. I'm not sure how I enjoy that. I also wanted to add that the biggest twist in my professional leadership journey has been adding in parenting into my long list of things that I've did, which started in March 2020, which was a nice way to kick off, or February 2020, but March 2020 obviously was COVID. So it's really given me a new perspective on just about everything. So having a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old daughter just keeps me honest, especially dealing with what I'm thinking about empathetic leadership and other things like that.
Oh my goodness. You want to test your leadership? Have a kid. Right?
Well, no one talks back to you like an authentic, 4-year-old with no filter. So
let's see. How do I inspire them to come my way just a little bit? I'm just saying. Oh, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on having a 2- and 4-year-old. Mm-hmm. You will survive it coming from someone who has a 25-year-old. So, a little bit of patience.
Awesome.
So, Daniel, share some highlights that first come to mind. If you were to outline your professional journey, give us some highlights.
I think as I look at my journey, I found out when I went to university, obviously for business and marketing, and I was working full time during university at a financial marketing company. I quickly learned that I love learning and I really don't like the education process of the education system.
That is so ironic.
I wasn't really a particularly great student, but I was really good at presenting. I had this weird balance between presentations and those sorts of things versus exam writing. So, had to keep the average up. But what it made me passionate about was communications, marketing, and sales, which kind of got me into the path I'm on now. So coming out of that first job after I graduated, I actually joined one of the sister companies of Halight, which was a marketing and communications company. And was in digital marketing and things like that. And I think the biggest consistent that I've learned over my professional career to this point is that you don't know what you don't know, and you always think you know more than you do. So every role, whether it was when I was assistant coach coaching and I wanted to be the head coach, or if I was a account executive in sales, or a marketing associate and I wanted to be a manager or a leader, I thought I was ready and wasn't really. And I think that's the biggest learning for me in my process, and has really had me focus on continuous learning, which is why one of the reasons why I think I'm so firmly in learning and development now as a job, but then also kind of take those practices down and understand that, hey, my employees probably think they know more than they do, but how can I be empathetic to that fact and help kind of bring them along to the process and reach their, I call it their Olympic gold medal. Actually, I should say one of my mentors calls it their Olympic gold medal that they want to achieve in their professional or personal life.
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking about, just from our conversations about learning and development, and just, you know, the power of human potential. And, you know, sometimes we walk along a journey, and I don't know if you've ever done this. I had an experience, one of my first pilot programs that I did when I was doing a management training program. Oh man, this dates me, 1994-ish, I think. Whew, I was a child. Anyway, you know, my first time, you know, going out to do a pilot, I barely knew what it was that I was teaching. And I had the opportunity to do it in Montreal using simultaneous translation in French. And at the end of that, I will say, I woke up and surprised myself. I was like, wow, I like my own potential surprised me. So have you ever had that experience where you went through something and you thought, you know what, I am so not equipped to do this. I am so out of my comfort zone. And you woke up and surprised yourself?
Yeah, I think when I first went from part of the sales process in my career to like the leader in the sales process, in terms of, hey, I'm not just taking 3 slides out of our deck, or I'm not just going to talk about these functionalities and outcomes as part of the process. I'm going to own it, and I'm going to sit in the boardroom with people more senior to me, with more experience than me, potentially knowing a lot more than I do. And I have to present them solutions and outcomes that potentially are going to change their business, or if they get it wrong, could get them fired.
Oh,
Right. I think that's where, you know, the very first time, you can't see it, it's slightly above on camera, but my very first deal that I closed on my own was with Fitbit. And I had met them at CES, and then I flew out to their headquarters in San Francisco. And this is when sales pitches always happened in person. Large sales pitches, not over Teams or Zoom or whatever they do now.
wow. Yeah.
And walking into Fitbit's headquarters and seeing their brand. And at that point in 2016, 2017, Fitbit was such a powerful brand in the fitness category. I was nervous, super nervous. But I just stuck to what I knew, spoke confidently, and probably the biggest thing that's helped me in my role is I believe that I'm a really good active listener. I think if you asked my wife and kids, maybe some days they wouldn't have the same opinion of that, but I'm a really good active listener, and I was able to do that and then just relate back what I heard and how our solutions helped them. So I think that very first deal was like, oh, you know what, maybe I can do this. And I've been able to, I think, relay that back to some of my team members as well as they navigate their growth as well.
And you've been at Halight for how long?
I always get this wrong. So I'm in my 13th year right now. So yeah, I joined in 2012 or early 2013. Yeah, 2012. So yeah, I'm in my 13th year now, and it's been an interesting journey from just a marketing communications and e-learning developer to now having a SaaS product and kind of owning that transition from a custom provider of learning or software to a SaaS provider of a product that needs to, you know, achieve consistent outcomes. And you can't just sit on the sidelines and say yes to all your customers and then tell them how much it's going to cost and you'll go build it. They're looking for something that meets their needs and their continuous evolution of their needs.
Yeah. So dig into that a little bit more with us and for our listeners. Daniel, tell us a little bit about Halight for our listeners who don't know exactly what it is that you do and who you get to work for.
Yeah. So Halight, we're a SaaS learning management system. I would call us a niche learning management system because we're not for everybody. But the focus of our software is to enrich the relationship between consumers and all the companies they buy from. So that could be if you're going into a brick and mortar store and you're talking to a sales associate, we want to help that sales associate educate that consumer on the products they're going to buy, the services or whatever they're going to buy. We also do that from the perspective of customer education, where you buy a SaaS product, maybe they have a training portal, or you buy, a larger service. If you shop at Best Buy, something like Geek Squad or Magnolia, and we provide a portal in order to allow consumers to be educated, but really just enriching that relationship in a world now that is so transactional. And some of the areas, obviously, I mentioned Best Buy. Best Buy is obviously a large customer of ours. People like Otter Products, OtterBox is a global customer of ours. Motorola, Chromebook, and Android. So we do it at a large scale. One of the most unique things about Halight is typically when a company is founded, they start and they get your 50 employee customers, your 100 employee customers. One of our first LMSs was for Best Buy USA. Oh, wow. And it was a little bit in reverse. Let's just start at the tip of the retail iceberg and then work our way down.
Right.
But it created, who we are, which is problem solvers and solution developers. So really any sort of training technology that's designed to enrich the customer experience, that's what we're focused on.
Okay. So you may be hired by the retailer or you may be hired by the manufacturer, and then you would be working with multiple retailers. Is that right?
That's correct. And one of the biggest trends I think we're seeing in the retail training space is that, and it might be for cost efficiency purposes, it might be for other things, but they're actually they push a lot of the training and learning down to the brand. And they're saying, hey, yes, we're going to provide our typical training environment, but we would also like you to provide training to our employees as well. And we're seeing an increase in that. And I think some of it is rooted in cost efficiencies. Yeah. But the reality of it is there's also the opportunity to, get a more subject matter expert involved and create a better training experience when you involve the manufacturers.
Okay. So yeah, oh boy, there's so much to dig in there, because you talked about how all of that affects the customer experience, because ultimately it's all about getting the product into the retailer and then getting the retailer to actually sell it, which involves a lot more than just product knowledge. And so how do you merge those things together? I know this is a big question. When you have a manufacturer that's wanting to sell more through the retailer, and yet the retailer already has maybe a selling skills program, maybe they don't have the product knowledge. How do you merge those two things together to make a better customer experience?
Well, the issue that I think a lot of retailers run into with, and this is obviously a lot of things that you and I have jammed about before, is customer experience is not a tangible, measurable. There's so many other things that go into it. And one of the things that I suggest to retailers when we speak to them about is think about B2B marketing companies who are focused on, customer retention over time and those sorts of things, and use some of those metrics to not just think about your monthly sales, your annual sales, but also what does your return look like from that customer? Do they keep coming back? Are they going to continue to come into your store, especially when they have options? And we in 2024 are, gifted with options everywhere in terms of where you can buy things, how you can buy things. So you want to use the customer experience and the ability to build a collaborative relationship as the metric. But the question always comes down to is how do you measure that outside of just the transaction? And I think for us, when you blend brands and retailers, one of the things that come into is you have the concept of sell in, you have the concept of sell through. So, okay, you as a retailer buy my product. So there's my sell in, but now I want the customer to actually purchase that. And I love the fact that the retailers are turning to the brands and saying, we want you to own this with us. Yeah. Rather than us just owning it, because we don't care what product gets moved off the shelf. We just want product to move off our shelves. So brands still need to own that last mile, because at the end of the day, if someone buys a television and it isn't the right television for them, they're not going to be mad at Best Buy. They're going to be mad at TCL or LG or Sony because the television didn't do what they wanted to do. So having the brands be able to own that with them is, I think, very impactful in the long run.
Well, and you're right. That's so different than it was even 10 years ago. I mean, one of the buzzwords today in retail is omni-channel. So it used to be customer experience was walking into a brick and mortar store. Today, their first experience may be a website, and that could be an LG website, that could be a Best Buy website. It could, they're a consumer's understanding of a brand is much higher today when they walk into a brick and mortar store than it ever was before because they're doing research. So it's interesting.
This is where I go back to that statement I made about the B2B statistics. So when I look at B2B sales and how I relate them to the retail environment is right now, 83% of B2B buyers are millennials. And one of the biggest characteristics of a millennial is self-discovery and continuous improvement. And that's a great thing from a leadership perspective as well, because millennials are unique. And most millennials now are the ones buying the products or buying things in the world. But as well, I'm saying we as a millennial make up a huge demographic financially in terms of who are making consumer spending decisions. Right. And because of that self-discovery, they're watching TikToks, they're watching YouTube videos, they're scrolling. They're obviously ads are everywhere on social as well, but they're doing the research before they come into the store. And that customer interaction is different. Somebody used to come to the store and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a television." And they would send you to different places. Where a lot of the focus group work we've done with our retail sales associates, and our platforms have over 100,000 sales associates on them every month, is the feedback we're getting back is customers are coming in the store and saying, "Hey, I have a mantle that's 48 inches long, and I'm thinking about putting a TV over top of it. I'll just keep going down the TV path because it's been my example all day. And I'm not sure if we should hang it this far or should I have a swivel mount?" So like they're asking questions that they would have never asked before. And someone would be like, "Hey, do you have a mantle in your house?" "Yes." "You're going to hang it on your wall?" "Great. You need to have this size of mount so you can swivel. So if you're standing in your kitchen cooking and your TV's 20 feet away from you, you can still get a good view of it when you're, just watching a movie or whatever while you're cooking." So that education that people are doing and self-discovery they're doing has completely changed that interaction. But I think it allows you to make it better as well if you can educate yourself appropriately, and then also make a long-lasting customer if you actually advise them in the right direction.
Oh, that's right. Oh, this could be a whole podcast just on that. I mean, that's one of the things that I have so much respect and admiration for with Halight is you all do so much research and you are flexible, you change, you base how you build your content and your content itself based on the research that's out there and who the end user is. And then one of my most exciting things about Halight is that you all prove it and you have all kinds of different ROIs. So there's 5 different questions in here. I'm going to narrow it down. Tell me a little bit about, I look at Halight and there are thousands of learning management systems. Right? I mean, we look at online learning and it is the fastest growing market in the education industry. And it's grown 900%. I know I'm probably not telling you anything that you don't know. It's grown 900% since its creation in 2000. The number of online learners is expected to increase to 57 million in 2027. And so, that's a lot of competition for Halight. So how do you all differentiate yourselves?
One of the things that I would say that we really use to differentiate ourselves is the concept of not just learning, but the earn perspective of it. So obviously bringing in the intrinsic and extrinsic motivations that people are concerned about. So that's number one. Number two is a lot of retailers now are making available their sales data. For some reason, for a long time, they used to hold that close to their chest and not share that with the brands. But going back to brands, and one of the things you said earlier was about peer-to-peer sales. In our programs right now, we see if someone is part of our program, our learn, sell, earn programs, the competition we're putting in, the incentivization structures in retail, we're seeing quarter over quarter 2.5 times more sales versus their peers who aren't part of the program. And these are in the voluntary enrolled program. So if someone's part of a Otter Products program or a Motorola program, as an example, they're seeing 2.5 times quarter over quarter. And the most unique statistic on that is if you stretch it out over to the course of a year, they're seeing 3.5 times the sell through versus their peers, because they're actually staying employed longer, because they're empowered and engaged with the brands that they're selling and they feel attached to them. So it's really two cool, really awesome statistics where we're able to kind of show that to people and say, hey, you could sell more than your peers. But then we always get the question off of that, which is, well, if every brand on the shelf is running these programs, at some point we're taken from people's pockets, right? Because everybody can't have market share growth in the industry, because that's impossible. And what we're seeing where those indications happen is just the average sell-through increase in the store is going up. So right now we sit at about, when we engage with a brand, we see somewhere between a 17 to a 30%, it's a wide range, but a 17 to 30% sell-through increase. What we see is if we know there's multiple brands in the category running these sorts of programs, that they see a flatten out of 20 to 25% across the industry, which allows them to move product quicker, and allows them to outperform in right now, which is the consumer spending dropping, which is a huge thing for them. So going back to your original question, which is what differentiates Halight's LMS, is we have, going back to our we enrich the relationship. Our goal is to help you sell more product through education, through efficiency, and through a personalized experience. And there are unique features about our software that allow us to do that efficiently in terms of our gamification components, some of the things around promotions and incentivizing the sale, spiff programs, things. We are focused on creating a learn, sell, earn philosophy across our environments.
I have so many more questions that I want to dig into. So one of the things that you started with is this whole, you capitalize on extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And the next thing that you said was voluntary. So are all of your learnings voluntary, or are some of them mandated? Why would I want to volunteer my time to take a training? That's so interesting to me.
There's a mix. I love the phrase, one of our learning development experts here, he says all the time, learning should be its own reward. And the reality of it is it's not the case.
Right.
But, we talk about, I think one of the most popular terms today in learning from a trend perspective is the idea of upskilling and soft skill development. And you hear it all the time, but the reality of it is there's always a what's in it for me question that is asked by the learner. So I love to believe that every organization out there is working to develop a learning culture that is empowering people to take time out of their day and educate and grow and try to reach their North Star or move into the next role or just become a mastery in their current role. But that's not the case. Some people need that extra kick or that extra push. So to your question, some of our programs are voluntary. The reason why in a lot of cases they're voluntary is because the brands don't have the ability to tell a manufacturer, the brand doesn't have the ability to tell a retailer, hey, make this person take my training. So a lot of times they'll provide product discounts, they'll provide Starbucks gift cards or Dunkin' gift cards or Visa gift cards to basically think about this any sort of spiff or commission program. They're encouraging them, saying, hey, take our content, learn about our products. It'll help you sell this product and help the customer the next time they come into the store. Also, obviously, we have our mandatory kind of required sorts of trainings and programs that we try to start with, but then our goal in the end is to build a learning culture, which means a culture of continuous learning. So we want to create a really good first impression from a learning perspective in terms of the content value, the efficiency of it, the personalization of it, make it as frictionless as possible. And then when they kind of come back to it, they're wanting to come back to that system and engage with content on their own merit after the fact. So they go back and and want to develop their own soft skills and take new skills and those sorts of things. So it's that balance of carrot versus stick, of like, do we want to tell them to do something or do we want to give them a carrot? But so going back to your extrinsic versus intrinsic, what I commented earlier is that go take it, here's a reward for, or go take it because we said so, or here's a reward for it. That's that extrinsic motivation that we're trying to push them. They have to take it because we told them to, or we're going to reward them to. What we want to get to is have them taking it because they want to, and they want to feel that growth happen. So we try to fight the balance of it. But I would say, introduce more intrinsic motivational factors over time.
Yeah. Well, and I would think that, one of the things that you said as well is if the employee feels more successful and their productivity goes up, I would think there would be a direct connection between that and retention, which obviously for retailers is probably one of the most, if not the most challenging thing right now in the workforce is, I've got these employees, frontline employees who, they may be heading somewhere else and this is a part-time job. Even if it's full-time, oftentimes they're headed somewhere else. So, retention is a huge challenge. It's in the top 4 of the most of the highest staff turnover industries. So that's huge.
This statement or my feelings on this is definitely not going to solve the staff turnover problem, but I have a unique opinion about it. And to be honest with you, one of my opinions comes from the fact that I coach a bunch of Gen Z university student athletes. The concept that younger millennials and Gen Zs are lazy or don't want to work, I think is garbage, if I'm being frank.
Thank you for debunking that. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I don't know if they'll put me on Mythbusters, but it's definitely an opinion. And the reason why I think that is the difference now is these people have choices. And the internet and omni-channel, all these things has created an environment where we have choices. And some of the examples of choices is, this is like, I'm going to get super like Gen Z influencer for a quick moment.
Go for it.
But like, if somebody is, has the passion and has the charisma enough, they can go make $50,000 starting a YouTube channel about fantasy football, which is something they're super passionate about.
Yep.
They don't have to work at the retail cashier counter. And that's where I think people forget that people have more options than they ever have.
That's right.
And similarly to that, I always use the Gen Z attention span thing. We get this question all the time as it relates to learning, is people don't, the data shows, and I don't have the metric, maybe we can share it afterwards, there isn't less attention span, there's more distractions. So there is more information and things coming a employee's way on a day-to-day basis than there was 1 year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So it's not that the attention span is bad. It's just that there are so many other things pulling them away.
Right.
Whether that's their device, whether that's their they're just more distractions. And I think when you balance get rooted back to like, we're still human beings, and it allows us to deliver value. If we can think about like, how can we, catch this person's attention? And that's why the concept of edutainment comes up all the time, is like, how can we catch this person's attention and then also deliver them information that is valuable to them? I think it helps. And seeing the reward also helps with that employee retention, or at least transparency. I think you may not be able to retain the university student who's working in a T-Mobile, but you may be able to get them to be transparent, saying like, hey, I really like my job, but I'm probably going to try to go do this after. So I only think I'll be here for 6 months, which at least allows the business to prepare.
And to be productive while they're there. And if they're productive and they feel successful, they may stay instead of going somewhere else, even during that time, when ordinarily we might have turned them. So I just think, some of the things that you're doing just make so much sense. And it's so interesting. I don't know that learning necessarily has changed. I think we've learned so much more about the brain, and I don't think death by PowerPoint has ever worked, whether it's, in a training setting, whether it's in a school education setting. So those micro learnings and the gamification that keeps people engaged. And I absolutely love what you said about choice. when I get to choose and then I get to experience really great information that actually helps me be more effective, whether this is my lifelong career or whether I'm going somewhere else, it just makes perfect sense. So I
My
love
my
that.
favorite part about COVID, and there's not many favorite parts, but this is my other than spend an exorbitant amount of time with my newborn that I wouldn't have got because I didn't travel at all or anything like that.
Yeah.
But my favorite part about COVID was, from a learning and development perspective, was people actually critically looked at what could be done virtually and what could be done physically,
Yeah.
or what had to be done physically. Going back to the choice, I always tell our customers that in a perfect world where budgets didn't matter, I would love that world as the head of growth, but they do matter. You would provide a video, a written, an audio, and an interactive training to everything you want to teach, and add a physical, or even you could say virtual instructor led, because obviously the cost, and add an interactive, like conversational component with a subject matter expert. And you would then have people choosing which one they want to listen to. And we actually have a really cool concept on this right now that we're piloting with a healthcare organization, which is, they're really trying to build a learning culture. They've kind of gone outside of the typical healthcare LMS to work with us. And they've provided all the training for their surgeons in an audio format so they can take it, listen on the way to work, and then do their knowledge checks when they get there. Because they're losing a lot of money by having them take training on the floor. So it's just like, can we get the same results educationally if we provide them audio? Which obviously podcasts, we're here doing one podcast, and audio is obviously huge, but it's just an interesting concept of like taking those choices and taking advantage of them rather than being mad that they have choices.
Yeah. That brings me right back to back in the day, Daniel. I'm going again way back. I don't know why I'm aging myself today. I am. It's fine. Strong in my 56 years old. I worked for Ultimate Electronics and I was a director of training. And one of the things that we did, because our budget went from $3.2 million to $200,000, I will never forget the day that I laid off 26 trainers. I mean, it was brutal. And we sat down and we looked at each other and we're like, okay, through adversity comes innovation. What do we need to do? How can we do this? And long story short, one of the things that we did is we got with each one of our brands, Sony, Klipsch, our top brands, Monster back in the day, and they were coming in and they would train the people that were there. There was no formal way to actually, train them in product knowledge. We didn't have LMSs back then. And so one of the things that we did is Sony actually gave all of our people little Sony MP3 players. And what we did is it was revolutionary back then. We had the brands actually buy into training, and they could buy at different levels from platinum all the way down. And what happened is, in between customers during downtime, they would take these MP3s and they would stand in front of Sony, and they would be guided to actually use what it was that they're being trained on instead of being trained in the back room. And we got results that, I mean, we got our training budget. I don't remember what it got back up to, because brands were actually paying to get in front of our people, because it was that important to give them the information, be exactly what you're doing. And that's partner with the retailer. And see, people got really engaged because when they were standing in front of a customer, they knew what to say. They didn't feel dumbfounded, like, the customer's asking all these questions and they know nothing about the product. So, your approach is such a win-win and so intentional to get that expert on the floor truly to become an expert and confident and productive, which makes perfect sense that then they're more productive and they feel better about the job that they do. I love it so much.
I think rooting that, first of all, that's an amazing story, because I think what's old is new again, right? They're empowering the brands, but also like it comes from a leadership perspective. And not to use the title of your podcast as the piece, but like,
oh, please do. Yes.
Unlocking the potential is like, you're just embracing the fact how these people want it to be communicated with, and how they want to be taught and how they want to learn. Right. And I think that from a leadership perspective, and I'm guilty of not doing this, and my wife always holds me accountable to this with my athletes, but like, just be resonating with them, delivering how they want to have information delivered to them goes a long way. They feel listened to, they feel respected, rather than just, oh, the company wants me to learn this stuff, so I have to take it.
That's
Oh, the
right.
company wants me to do this, I have to like it. And that's where I look at it. I'm like, if you can just resonate with your employees, with your team members, talk to them, listen to what's important to them, and make small tweaks. They don't even need to be large tweaks, but just acknowledgements that you've listened. It goes a huge way. And we do this in our product because we do about 15 to 20, I would say, user interviews a week at this point,
Wow.
where we're speaking to sales associates and saying, what do you like about this? What don't you like about this? What do you like what the brands are doing? What don't you like? What would you like to see more of? And then in our next version releases, they're actually seeing tweaks to the product, and we're getting messages back being like, hey, it's so cool that I told you about this and now you're doing it. Or and that's, I think it's no different than when you're dealing with your actual employees, is if you listen to them and provide them back help. I use the clip from Ted Lasso when he did I'm not sure if you've seen Ted Lasso, but when he did the suggestion box and he switched the shower pressure, like those little things matter to people because that's what human nature is all about.
That's right. So many things that make you different that could be its own podcast. I love that you go to the source. I love that you care how they want to, how your learners want to learn, and you make the commitment to following through on that, and just so many things. So all of those things, I'm sure, Daniel, create incredible ROIs. And I know just from our conversations, Halight is all about the ROI and proving the ROI. And if you're not getting the ROI, making changes. So talk to us about ROI. What ROIs are you getting? How do you measure it? How do you guys look at that?
Yeah, I think there's two sides of it. The one is the percentage growth and the return on investment. You know, somebody spends $1 with us, what do they get back? And we're using sell-through metrics like, I'll say, member versus non-member. So people who are on our software versus people who aren't. And this is when we have access to POS data, when we partner with the retailers. So we're able to say, hey, we sold this user the 90 days before they joined Halight LMS, sold $100. And after they sold in the next 90 days, they sold $150, right? That shows a 50% growth increase. And then we're able to see that. So that's individual. And then we also map that against their peers. So because we have that connection with the retailer, we're actually seeing that, okay, Daniel sold $150 in those 90 days. Wendy wasn't on the system and she only sold $80. So now we're seeing the 2.5 times number that I alluded to earlier, which is about what we see across our customers right now, is about 2.5 times more than their peers who aren't in the programs, which is the ROI side of things. So those are two ways that we look at the return on the investment. And then the other component, which is a I'll say a term and concept that we're really toying with right now, is the conversation around, I'll use like VOI. So what's the value on your investment? You know, and it's less tangible, but we're looking at the perspective of what is the customer experience? What are your CSAT scores in store? What are your NPS scores in store? So going back to those typical kind of sales metrics that B2B companies use. And are we seeing an increase in traffic in your store? Are we seeing people make a better choice or coming back to your store to talk to the same people? When we do store visits, when we ask questions like, do they remember the brand representative that came to visit them and train them in person? So what is that actual value from a brand affinity perspective that we're providing, in addition to the direct transactional sales data? I'll be honest, there's a lot of times when they're just like, yeah, but I need to know I put in $1 and I get out $2.
Sure.
Which is fine, but it's an education piece for us of like, hey, brand advocacy is a real thing. It's used in marketing every day. A lot of the training we're doing is part of marketing organizations or sales organizations. So they understand the concept of value. So we're trying to help tie those two things together so they can create a more compelling story overall that doesn't just result in, going back to your point, oh, budget cut season because the economy's down a little bit. We're just going to slash learning, which is seemingly at the tip of the iceberg every time that happens.
That's right. So trying to figure out where to go with this, Daniel, because I want to go in 5 different directions. And, you know, we are just going to have to schedule another podcast because I think there are so many things that you all are doing right that I would just love to dig into as best practices. And we could talk all day long about all the things you're doing right. You are the head of growth for Halight. What are some of the challenges that you see going forward to continue to grow at Halight and to grow the company?
I think the first one is competition. To your point, there is so many SaaS LMSs out there, and discoverability is a huge issue for all of those companies, not just ours. And a lot of people are trying to, I'll say, put a large net out there saying we're the LMS for everybody, but we've found a lot of success recently being the LMS for this group, and not competing, and also knowing when to say no in those relationships as well. So pulling out and saying, hey, this isn't the right deal for us. Because we actually had a situation this year where we pulled out of a deal, would have been a pretty solid financial deal, and we pulled out of it. And then that person ended up leaving that organization, went to a new organization and called us and had a deal for us that they thought would make more sense. So like that honesty and transparency was huge. So that's, I think, the biggest concern obviously is going to come down to the competition. I think that consumer spending and the evolution of retail is still going to be a question mark that comes into, the niche that we live in. And people have lots of questions, but that's where our growth and our total accessible market expansion has come from, creating a better consumer experience, customer experience all around, not necessarily, in a brick and mortar retailer. So we're starting to expand to, B2C type sales. How do we deal with the customer directly after they purchase a product online with some of our brands? So there's a lot of growth from our perspective in the customer experience world that we're focused on. And then lastly, we offer, what's one of the unique things about us is we offer a SaaS product, but we also offer all the accompanying services around it. So we'll operate your product for you. We'll help acquire new users to it. We'll build the content. We'll build the strategy on how to engage those people, give you the ideas of what the spiff should be. We'll consult with subject matter experts. So because the fact that we offer a turnkey solution, there's a ton of opportunity for us overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this business, you're exactly right. The good news is it's growing. The good news is it's growing. So it's good news, bad news, because what the competition is just going to get stronger and stronger. And I think one of the things that you all just do so well, again, is coming back to, hey, look, if it's not working, first of all, let's find out it's not working, or there's a trend going in a different direction. And you all are just so flexible and so nimble that I'm very excited to see what happens in the future and what things. I think you were one of the first ones that actually came out with gamification onboarding, right?
Yeah, one of the things that I think that we look at in this industry is, what we're actually doing here. So like a lot of companies get stuck in like, we're a learning development company, or we're a training organization, or we're a marketing organization. And the reality is, like, at our root, we are a storytelling company. We were a storytelling organization when we built custom e-learnings. We were a storytelling company when we did digital marketing and in-person marketing activation. Our goal is to tell stories. And what we see is, whether it's narratively on TikTok or Instagram or anywhere else people are consuming content, they're consuming a story of some kind to learn about something and create an action afterwards. And we've been able to root that, I think, identity as Halight in the evolution of where we're going, and also make it a little bit of a unique spin on what the market is doing and give us competitive advantages in those spaces.
Yeah. Well, so much to share. And, you've been in the industry so long and you've seen so many changes, and it sounds like y'all have navigated those changes so well. And so we anticipate that's going to continue to happen with Halight. It'll be fun to continue to watch and learn for sure from you. I'm curious, as you've gone through all of these changes, go back to your 21-year-old self. What would you share with us that you would tell your 21-year-old self, or someone who's just starting out in the industry? What advice would you give?
This can be so stereotypical, but I think I led with it a little bit, is listen first, talk last. I've been in, as part of my coaching side as well, I have to keep up with certifications and qualification levels and things like that. And when I go to those environments and I'm with 30 other coaches, I have the opportunity to just listen and learn a little. I'm not going to use the 1% notion, but like learn a little bit from every person and pick those up. And I think when I was younger, I thought I knew a lot more than I do now. And I think for me, it's just go back and say, listen first, talk last. You you have no experience, you don't know what you're doing. So leverage what you can take in from everyone else around you and just move forward with something that you really enjoy and what you're passionate about. Because I was lucky enough that I landed somewhere where I was able to relate business to coaching and to be leadership, and not everybody gets that opportunity. So, trying different things and listening is a huge component.
Yeah. Because it sounds like, I love that you're saying, try it, because guess what? You may fail.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever failed at something and then you went back and you went, oh, okay. And you leveraged that to get to where you are today?
I'm going to tell you the craziest story, and it has nothing to do with me, but it happened 10 days ago. And I used it as an example with my players this past week. So my in-laws live 3 miles from our house, 5 kilometers.
Wow. You're very brave.
Yeah. And well, they're all right sometimes. No, but a lot of times if we're going over there, I'll choose to run there or walk there as exercise. So my 4-year-old Oakley came up to me and she said, we're going to Nana and Pop-Pop's tomorrow. I want to bike there. And I want you to keep in mind, she's never made it to the end of our street, which is like, a third of a mile. And it took us an hour and 2 minutes, but she made it to Nana and Pop-Pop's house. Oh. And going back to your point about trying new things, because you never know where you're going to go. I think that when we were younger, we would just do because we didn't know better. But there's all that adult learning theory about like, we have all that garbage stuffed in our brain now that tells us, no, don't do that because we have previous experience or whatever. And I've been inspired the past week by a 4-year-old deciding to go bike 3 miles and taking an hour and not stopping a single time. And what you said made me think about that is like, you get so many people who say, you know what? Do we really need an LMS? We've always done it this way. We've always just had our learnings in SharePoint, or we've always had our learnings in Google Drive or whatever that is. Do we really need to build a piece of content? Do we really need to, go to digital, or vice versa? Do we really need to go back to physical? I think there's a lot of garbage that's in our head that we can learn from our kids and just try something new and then adjust when maybe it doesn't go your way, or maybe it does. And as a result, you need to adjust.
Yeah. Oh, Daniel, I love that example so much of, out of the mouths of babes. There's no reason that they can't. So they believe that they can. And those limiting beliefs, I think it's so easy to just let those infiltrate and we get stuck and we get paralyzed. And to your point, we do what we've always done. And so I just commend you and Halight for continuing to fail forward and learning and moving forward and really consistently being on the cutting edge of learner first and what does the learner need, and truly going to the source versus let's just create great content and hope that it sticks. So I just want to publicly say thank you so much for making the industry better. I think you're one of the best in L&D. You're certainly a mentor to me when I put together a program. You've helped me with a speech that I'm doing in October to really think more globally about, look, the manufacturer has an opportunity to get what it is that they sell to the retailer. It doesn't stop there. The retailer then has opportunity to partner with them in product knowledge and to get that to the end user and to get that to the consumer. And overall, the brand is all of our responsibility. And so I appreciate that you care about every part of that process and that you are doing such an excellent job in all of those sectors. So thank you for what you do in the L&D space.
Well, I appreciate that, and thanks for having me on. I enjoyed the first couple I've listened to, and I'm just happy to be on. Sometimes I can talk a little bit too much, but the podcast is the perfect place to do that. That's what we're here for. So
you could never really talk too much, and I so appreciate you being on. And I look forward to our next podcast because I know that there will be. So we will make sure that Daniel's information is in the notes in the podcast. And I just thank every single one of our listeners for tuning in. I know that time is precious, and the fact that you've invested this time with us, it does not go unnoticed. So remember, fail forward, unleash your potential, and tune in next week.
Thanks for listening to Unleash with Wendy Swanson. Make sure to subscribe and follow to be notified when the newest episodes of the podcast go live. Please take a moment to rate and review us. It helps others discover Unleashed and join our movement of forward-thinking leaders. You can find contact information and important links in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode, and remember, keep leading with authenticity, embrace change, and choose to live life unleashed.